There are many things that happen in our lives. Some are large, some are small. And sometimes it is something that we take for granted that teaches us one of the greatest joys of our life. The name of this story is Welch's Grape Jelly. The sounds that are made by large steel prison doors slamming are sounds that have never left my mind or my ears even after 40 years. That hollow, horrible echo bounced off one steel wall and then another to travel more than a quarter of a mile to wake up each and every prisoner who was confined within inside the prison's large, steel, unforgiving cage. I was just a 19-year-old boy who'd bought a six-pack of beer at a party, who was now dressed in prison attire and ready to serve another long day of his 3-year, 5-month, and 28-day sentence. Out of the small steel cell I walked, and I headed down the concrete and steel walkway with hundreds of other prisoners 3 stories above the concrete earth below to receive my breakfast. Upon entering the large steel dining room, still half asleep, the echo of clanging, banging, hammering steel never ceased. It never stopped. The steel walls, the steel doors, the steel pots, the steel pans, the steel trays, the steel silverware, the steel benches, and the steel tables were a constant reminder. The sounds of steel were the daily reminders of the terrible, unforgiving deed that I had committed against the society in which I had once been allowed to live. I shuffled along very slowly, dragging my scarred, bent steel tray down the long stainless steel line as the kitchen inmates threw, slammed, and splattered disgusting-looking food onto my 3-partition steel tray. I never made eye contact with anyone, and I never stopped moving slowly forward. I raised my hand to my mouth to remove the cold, solid grit that had splattered onto my hands, arms, and face as the food was pitched toward me and landed on my cold steel tray. Upon entering the end of the line, I reached up and I picked up 2 pieces of cold, burnt toast. Then I mashed them as hard as I could down into the other cold food below. Then I walked toward the old painted table, which had probably been painted gray for the 53rd time. Finally, I sat down, placing my hands over my face just for a moment, and I gave thanks to God for whatever little bit I might have in my life, whatever that would be. There were no tears from this scared young boy. Tears are a sign of weakness, and weakness is a sign of trouble in any prison. I reached over and I picked up the one thing that I knew had been made out in the free world. It was a small packet of Welch's Grape Jelly with a peel-off top. I held the packet up to my eye toward the large steel prison lights to look at its beautiful purple color. I finally lowered my hand and stared at the small package. I wondered if some free, beautiful young woman in a factory somewhere might have touched and handled this same package with her warm, kind, gentle hands before sending it off to me in this ungodly place of sadness. I picked up my fork, took a large portion of powdered egg, and placed it into my mouth. I chewed once or twice, and then slowly I opened my mouth, allowing the disgusting eggs to fall back onto the steel prison tray. Quickly, I pushed the tray away and just sat there with the one small packet of Welch's Grape Jelly. Other prisoners at the table asked me if I wanted my food. I told them to take what you want. I reached over and I picked up one piece of cold burnt toast, and I shook off the cold dried grits, and I placed the toast on the dirty gray steel table. I opened the small jelly packet and I spread the firm purple jelly out onto the toast. Then slowly I raised it to my mouth and I took a bite. Then I suddenly placed my head down on the large steel table so no one could see the tears rolling from my eyes, and I secretly cried. I will never forget that split second of pleasure for as long as I live. I will always remember the mixed tears of sorrow and joy that I shed that day sitting at that steel prison table. In spite of all the sadness, the meanness, the hatred, the gloom, the horror, the death, the misery that surrounded me, it was right then, at that very moment, that I realized for the first time in my life that goodness could have a feel and a taste. That goodness was supposed to have a meaning and was supposed to be appreciated and enjoyed. That some form of goodness could be found anywhere at any time, even in the worst of places. Even today I love Welch's grape jelly. I have it in my refrigerator and a spare jar in my pantry at all times. It is and will always be my favorite jelly. I have eaten jellies and jams from all over the world, and I have never found the same ingredients in another packet of jelly, large or small, and I really don't believe that I ever will.